Hey, good morning, social media everywhere, because I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, X. I've got broadcast everywhere. Plus, Emilio and Todd are broadcasting, and so welcome to the Business and Bytes podcast. We're doing a special event because we think it's important. So I invited Emilio and Todd, good friends of mine from the industry, to come talk about this telecom thing that's going on, where we now have our ninth telecom company that's saying that they've had a breach from Chinese hackers. And so we're going to talk about what that means because I think the information is super valuable. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have you guys introduce yourself and then we'll get started.
All right. I'll let Todd jump in there. Go ahead, Todd.
Thanks, Emilio. My name is Todd Thorson. I'm with Tange Cybersecurity and Technologies. I'm in the beautiful suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. So for me, it's already afternoon. Unlike John, I think it's like 4 a.m. where you are or something. So, but it's a balmy 35 degrees here today. So Fahrenheit, depending on from where you're looking and tuning into. But I help companies protect what's important to them, and I will introduce a healthy dose of plucky comic relief where possible.
Awesome. That's what we love. That's what we love.
Thank you,
Amelia.
Todd. My name is Emilio Mejia, CEO of AM3 Tech and Cybersecurity, formerly co-host of the Business and Bytes podcast. So thanks for having me again, John. As Todd said, another cybersecurity professional, just educating and informing all our viewers, our guests, our prospects, our clients, whoever's watching on what's out there, how to protect yourselves, and what to be aware of, pretty much.
Awesome. Awesome. And I'm John Hansman with Truett out in Washington State. And yes, it's 43 degrees before, it's almost 11 o'clock here. So it's not quite 3 a.m. But it is earlier. And I know, Emilio, it's probably like 85 degrees where you're at.
It is high 70s today. We've had a pretty
Still nice.
bunch. We've had a cool bunch of weeks, and to me, that means it's gotten down to like 62 a couple times.
Oh my gosh.
That's nice. Well, thanks for being here, guys. Emilio, thanks for joining. We don't get rid of you. We just bring you back as a special guest as much as possible. That's
Bring me
really
back
the idea.
anytime, man. You know, I'm always available.
I love it. Well, we're going to dive into this whole thing going on with this Chinese telecom hacking thing that's happening. So we have at this point, as of yesterday, so that was December 19th, or sorry, December 29th. I don't know what day it is. December 29th. We have 9 telecom companies, including 2 of the largest, so AT&T, Verizon, reporting that they've had data breaches. Todd, my understanding is you've been following this the last few weeks. So why don't you give us a really good synopsis of what you know, what you've been watching, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I have been tracking this since the beginning, early part of December, mostly around the concerns for my own clients, which are the fact that while these hackers are able to, really a lot of that is more political espionage, that they are trying to spy and listen in on important business conversations, political conversations. But in the melee, of course, they're listening to each of our phone calls and text messages. And the part that really got me interested in trying to follow this is the fact that the carriers and the government, our own government, are saying, well, we know they're in there and we don't know how to get them out or keep them out. So stop doing all these things, one of which is using SMS texting, traditional text. Now, most people may not know, like, texting was not invented as some sort of fun, cool thing for people to talk to each other. It was originally designed for telco workers to be able to send quick, short messages to each other while troubleshooting the cellular grid. That's what that was originally for. And then it sort of got leaked out for public use. And then it kind of went from there, right? If you remember, too, when Twitter first came out, it had a limited character set that was the same exact limit that an SMS text could be originally when texting was first released, because the whole idea was workers could just send little messages to each other. So that technology really wasn't fortified or designed for mass public use anyway, contrary to my daughter's 5,000 text messages a month when we used to have to pay for them, right? So the reality of today is it just doesn't hold up, and they're able to read all those without a problem. So many of the carriers, I know I have T-Mobile myself, have forced people to use what is called RCS messaging. I did a little tech tidbit on how to determine if your phone is already set up for that or how you can find it. If you're an Apple user, it's iMessage is the product. Um, and that will allow you to send and receive encrypted messages. It does have some neat other features too, but you want to be using that and stop using traditional SMS text altogether.
So for Apple people, that means if you're talking to somebody and it's blue, it's encrypted. If it's
You're gonna you're gonna
green,
you're gonna split the
um,
masses. You're gonna split the masses of the audience
Oh,
here
yeah, right. Hey, so
between
here's the other
Android
thing
and
though.
Apple users.
If you have an Apple phone, you
Hmm.
should upgrade if you haven't already to the latest iOS, because the latest iOS actually works with Android phones and iMessage. So you're actually able to move to that more secure type of text messaging if you, but only on the newest version of iOS. They just in the nick of time, Apple upgraded to be able to do the RCS messaging through Android.
I think they saw the pressure coming. Not only the social construct of what I was just speaking about, right? You mentioned this, and people get really sensitive when we talk about the color of their bubbles and having this communication, especially in the younger and teenage crowd. But something else that's come up, like you mentioned, they see WhatsApp, and WhatsApp is a big competitor to everybody, and it's not um, proprietary to any of the operating systems. So they're like, hey, if you use this, everything's encrypted. But I know Apple really wants their users using iMessage as much as they can. So they need to be able to add those features to make people feel safe while they're using their devices,
Totally,
for sure.
totally, yeah. And I mean, I use WhatsApp for a lot of other communications, a lot of groups and things like that. Because not in this particular issue, but there's some things that annoy me about when you add Android users on an Apple device. It's probably the same way on a Android device backwards. You have to start a whole new chat. So you might have every time you add somebody, you have like 5 chats open, and people go to the wrong one and all of that. Sort of things like WhatsApp's really nice, but all that to say, what we're seeing is people who don't have updated equipment are more vulnerable than people who do. So that's an important tidbit. If you are using traditional, just regular text messages, you could be vulnerable to this. Now, I don't think that you're the general average person is the target to Chinese hackers, not necessarily. But I mean, really, what this comes down to is again, it's espionage, looking at people who are in the government. Would you think that they'd have their stuff together as far as that goes? But we also have New Jersey drones as a problem.
Well,
Throw that in there.
you really need to consider, I mean, even for the average person, right? So, one thing that the Chinese government has done really well, in my opinion, is to facilitate these government sponsored hacking groups in efforts to monetize their activities.
Mm-hmm.
And so who's to say at some point that these hackers will not get together with the hackers that are across the hall in the same building that are targeting people like you and me to say, hey, we got all these text messages here. Use them to help build out your dossier on information on your targets.
Yeah.
Right. So now, do you really care if there's a text message that says, hey, mom, come pick me up at soccer practice early? Or could a criminal use that to target, extort, or otherwise influence you as a parent in thinking that maybe your child is compromised or somebody's watching your child and paying off some sort of fee, right? So if they continue to just follow that down the line, I mean, sure, right now they're only caring about political espionage, but they're always looking for new ways to monetize their activity.
Right.
And having that information isn't good for anybody. No matter
Well, that and we're not looking at, when you look at the articles, it's not just text messages. There's actual like location data, metadata.
Right.
So if you
Phone
think
calls.
about what is the Chinese, what kind of information do foreign entities that don't like America want? They want to know where people go and what they do and know their behavior and all of those different things. And then they also want to be able to look at private text messages. And I wouldn't put it past them to steal money. So I would tell people, don't put account information into SMS text messaging. Be careful what you actually send in an unsecure way. And we talk about this all the time, right? Don't send that crap through email either. Like, it's like some of these things that are plain and simple, like at least it should be. So now we really want to add, we don't really think about text messaging is not secure.
So let's just while we're on this topic, let's just run down the list real quick. I feel like this is very self-explanatory, but some of our viewers, and I think you, me, and Todd know that through education we figure out what they know, what they don't know. So passwords, social security numbers, credit card numbers, date of births, anything. It could be the smallest thing that you think doesn't matter, but somehow, because we're human and because we relate all things, that's going to be connected to something else. So your dog's information, that could lead someone to knowing your secret questions or your password or just anything. Just the social engineering possibilities are so big that, we recommend anything that can be tied to anything that's sensitive, do not send that over an unsecured means. In this case, we're talking text messaging and SMS.
Yeah. So I think it's important. Todd, I think it's really valuable. Maybe you want to go through your Todd Tibbet real quick that you talked about how people can know the difference, particularly on Android, between SMS and RCS.
Emilio, did you see how when he mentioned Android, like his face changed? Did you see that?
Yeah.
Like,
it's a sensitive
John,
conversation, no matter where we're at. This is
I always say that because I have an Android phone sitting on my desk,
holding the door open, or
it's an old employee's phone, and I don't really use it, and I don't really I can fumble my way around. That's
being honest.
Being honest, I fumble my way around.
I'm holding both here. I got the iPhone.
I have both in
and
here.
I got the iPhone and the Android. I switched over about 2 years ago, just for fun, really, to try something new. They're both great phones in their own, and what they do.
100%. I'm when it comes to what my clients do, I'm completely agnostic to which devices they want to use. But I think it's important from a perspective of someone who's on Android to be able to discuss how do you know? Like, how do you know? For us, it's easy. In general, Apple tells you, it's on the very first message you send to somebody, it says RCS on the very first message. And then from there, you can see delivered and read, just like you do.
Correct. Yeah, it should say RCS message where you're typing physically in that little bubble. And that's how you'll really know that you're in the right messaging app. Based on your phone manufacturer, it will change. Whereas, in the Apple world, it's all the same. It's all Apple. It's all the same fruit. But in the Android world, you might have a Samsung, you might have a Google, and they may have different apps that perform the same function. But it should say the acronym is consistent, at least, so that does help. Should say RCS, Richard Charles Sam message, within the bubble, and then that is how you know at least you're dealing with the secured messages. You do get a lot of extra little perks and features, such as knowing when the other person's typing, better emojis, and all kinds of other fun support that you wouldn't get in a traditional text message. So I do have a Todd Tech tidbit. I don't know if you can put that. I think it's in our private chat, John. If you could put that.
You could, if you want to go on to my Facebook, this Facebook event, you could throw it in.
Oh, yeah, I'd have to find it. Okay. Yeah. So I do every week on every Thursday, I release a new tech tidbit. So that is out there. If you look it up, it was from December 5th. And it does go through both Apple and Android with some screenshots to show you what it's supposed to look like when it's working properly. So that's pretty straightforward. I think back to the whole bigger topic of the Chinese hackers too, is that it's important to note that the Chinese government is. Did you see the article about the Chinese government last week? I think about how they're mad because
Well,
they're
they're always
mad
mad.
that they believe that the American government is spying on them, and they're upset about it. And that all of the spying that we claim as Chinese is actually internally generated and created, and we're just doing it just to make the Americans mad at Chinese.
Oh, fascinating.
So that was a very interesting article. Not like we're diving off into conspiracy theories, but it is interesting to hear that sort of propaganda being thrown around as well. I like to find it hard to believe that that would not be accurate, but it's an interesting spin on the whole topic that might be being portrayed internally, at least to Chinese people, I suppose. Unless I
Yeah.
guess they're the people that actually work at those facilities, then I guess they would know the truth.
Right.
Right.
I guess we all know that everyone's spying on everyone. I mean, that's just the reality of espionage. Like everyone's looking at it. And that's a fact. And I think the big question is that how can this particular incident explode into something that really other than like national security issues? What potential vulnerabilities does this show exist that really we need to be thinking about? Like, how do we protect ourselves from this? If these people are actually getting into these phone companies' information, like, what do we do here? Because we're talking 9 major telecom companies. This
So
is
one of the
pretty
things we
much
have to
every American's phone has been hacked, or at least the phone provider you're using for the most part has probably been hacked.
and the capacity of the types of companies that we're talking about. These are companies with blank checks for their cybersecurity, right? This is not a small medium business that usually I would say 80% of the time haven't even budgeted for cybersecurity. Our clients different usually, since we kind of lead with that first. But I'd say in my history, in my last couple of years, and maybe you guys can attest to this, a lot of companies are saying some aren't even doing regular IT. Um, Others are like, why do I need this type of security? And that's when we come in and we educate. So, these are companies that have to come up with the budget. These companies we're referring to here are giants, behemoths, blank check, and they're still being infiltrated. So, to John's point, how does the smaller person feel safe when the bigger people with the unlimited funds and unlimited money can't protect themselves either?
Well,
Is
I
one of the
think
big
that's where it
things.
goes. You have to really take responsibility for yourself, right? You have to make sure that, especially if you're running a business, you're putting the right tools in place and the right protections to protect your business, its assets, and its people. So we can't live in this world where we just fully trust that the big tech companies are going to protect us, because it's obvious that at this point, the government is even saying, I can't even help you here. I don't know what to do. That leaves us, the regular citizen, to have to deal with this on our own.
I think it's important to discuss too, and Amelia, this I think is kind of where you were headed with this is, these large companies, some of them even factor in, well, you know what, we're just going to get breached and we'll just survive it, and we'd rather spend the money on a PR firm to spin it later and buy everybody a year of credit monitoring instead of actually protecting up front. Right. However, for small businesses, that's just not an option. But the upside to dealing with small businesses, if you do it correctly, yes, you're never 100% protected from any sort of an attack. However, at least for now, if you are marginally better than all of your neighbors, the criminals will go after the neighbors first because they're an easier target. And I think as opposed to an AT&T or a Verizon or a T-Mobile, a big ship, they're just a target anyway, even though they have 400 people in security and they're eventually going to get in. However, I think like the old days where we used to sort of do security by obscurity. I mean, the reality is 10 years ago, yeah, you're a smaller company. We got antivirus, we got a firewall, we got backups, we're good to go. That's no longer good enough. However, what is good enough these days is even a good best effort at protecting a small business is going to make you a less desirable target than the 10 companies on your block that aren't doing anything. And I think that's important to differentiate between that and Target, who can hire a PR spin firm and 400 people in security to pretend they're doing it right.
Yeah, and I agree. I can't tell you how many times we have this year seen specifically phishing attacks that have come from other companies. Like, we see our own customers getting phishing attacks from their own customers, from their vendors or customers or whoever that is, because those other people got compromised. And of course, we're the ones who end up stopping. It stops with us and our current client, but who knows how that family tree, if you will, of phishing attacks has gone up until it got to us. It could be 100 clients that they got into, before we stopped it. And how many of those did people fall for? And I think it really does mean I love that. Even best effort is better than absolutely doing it.
I have it at least once a month. I'll see a bunch of chatter, right? I'll see a bunch of logs get hit where there's a bunch of attacks that are stopped by our systems protecting our clients, which I was doing the numbers for the end of year because I always like to do that. And it was over 3.5 million distinct attacks and events throughout the year across all my clients, added up in aggregate between email and direct attacks themselves. And I'll get a request from one of my clients saying, a particular email gets blocked, and they're like, "Oh, they used to work here, and we know them." And I'm like, "Yeah, we just got 400 messages from that same person at this other company. Yeah, you know them. They've been compromised. We need to talk to them. We'll get them on the phone." But if I would have just released the email or something, then we would have had the virus, right? And it's like, it's difficult to continue trying to educate even our own clients because this stuff is happening so fast and from so many different directions. And I'm proud of the fact that we have thwarted those attacks, but also it's downright scary because these are people that used to work there, used to work for my client. Now they're at a new client and they have everybody in their address book. And that's why we're getting slammed with hundreds of messages when they get compromised.
And we're in the same boat, right? We're seeing the uptick on our own side of I think we directly, I don't know if we had 3.5 million alerts like that, but we definitely had 6 events in the last 6 months that were distinct, that triggered alerts that we actually stopped business email compromises in the last 6 months.
Well, right, but each of those events would have been hundreds of
100%.
Right, yeah. That's where I'm getting that from. I'm adding up all the emails, all the attacks on the firewalls, right?
Yeah. We
probably I'm saying overall, not just the ones that made it through, I guess. To John's point,
God no.
Yeah. to John and Todd's point, both of you made very valid points. It's the spread. It's like wildfire. So imagine you hit me, and let's say my contact book is 800 people. If you just hit 2 or 3 of those, now you have access to their 800 or 500 contacts. And it doesn't mean you're going to stop attacking the people that you got from me. So now your number is just, right? You hit me and I was just 1. Now you got 800. Now you hit 2 or 3 of my contacts and they each have, let's call it 300. Now you're up to almost 2,000 and change in, targets, let's call it. And like you guys are saying, you're seeing, Todd said he saw about 3 million and change. Each one of those targets, you can just automate your systems to just keep attacking. So as you guys mentioned,
Think about if each one of those is an invoice scam or an actual money-making scam, where they're actually say they're getting 10,000 to 20,000. I've seen as much as $40,000 on a really small business each time they run that scam. Think about how much money that is, and that's why they keep doing it, because they're making a ton of money.
$27 million every day out of our economy. Every 39 seconds, someone's hit.
That's nuts.
So bringing up the awareness, which I know in a lot of the podcasts that me and John were doing, a lot of what we touched on was the security and awareness training, because that's where you start, right? That's where you start educating the users on this stuff is out there. I think that's one of the biggest things. If you don't know what's out there, like Todd just mentioned, his client said, "Oh, this is from a previous employer." Yes, but let me tell you what people are doing with previous employers' information, right? And you have that conversation, and now that one person knows. But how do you stretch that to everybody? And how do you stretch that to be the normal thinking of an employee?
Yeah.
Not only when he's in your company, but he goes to another company or another company comes to yours. You don't want that everybody that comes to you is green. It's kind of like everyone needs to start getting on this wagon so that when people interchange companies, they have this mindset. It needs to be a thing, not only in job, but on my last webinar in October, I talked about it on the personal side. How many people's elderly relatives are being hacked or scammed because they're not aware of what's going on? So I don't want the conversation to shift too much, but as a whole, just the security and awareness of it is, where it needs to begin at.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think this is just, it goes back to what you said earlier, Emilio. Like, if you have these giant companies who have unlimited budgets being hacked, like, we as the little guys need to take it seriously, and we need to be putting in best effort. Because what we see is that people who have successful attacks, we see both. We see the people who have these big budgets, but the people who go out of business are the little guys who have nothing in place at all. Those are the guys who actually are really affected, because the AT&Ts of the world they can afford to lose millions of dollars to this stuff and still stay afloat.
Or
But
get
the
bailed
reality
out
is, a
if
small
needed.
business can't. Like, small businesses are going to go out of business if they have a similar style of attack that actually gets clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you guys
So,
sorry.
what
Thought I
else?
lost you for a
Is there anything
second.
else? Is there anything else we want to talk about in regards to this that we think is helpful? I think that I think it's just important to realize, like, there's a lot. This is just one story too of stuff that's going on in the cybersecurity space. This is just the biggest newsmaker right now. But we've seen a bunch of other stuff recently that has been going on as far as other events that are similar, that are big companies. This isn't isolated. This is just what's making the news right
Yeah, one of my biggest things is you're not too smart to get hacked. You're just too smart to make the news. So when I bring these up to viewers or guests or people that I'm educating on farming, I like to tie the things in. Like, if you read this article, um, you'll hear that it speaks about them going after people in high level positions, maybe within the government or maybe within different companies that they can access that data. Take that same scenario and apply it to your business. Imagine they get in and imagine they touch those key people, the CFO, the CEO, the COO, people with um, visibility into everything that you're doing, with access to everything that you're doing, and with influence. And what type of hit would your business take if they were compromised through that avenue, right? Reputation, clientele, information, finances, client data, which seems to hurt the most because not only does it affect you, but it affects your customers, which in turn affects your reputation, your clientele, your ongoing customers, your new customers. It's just the trickle down effect is so much. I feel like we get on here and we talk about this weekly, daily, monthly, and it's hard to resonate with it until you're hit. And it's one of those things that if you learn the lesson before you get, when they tell you the stove is hot, if you learn the lesson just from listening, instead of putting your hand on the stove and getting burned, it can definitely go a long way.
now. Yeah. So here's what I would say. I think some takeaways, just kind of to recap. You need to know when you're sending data digitally, you need to know the amount of security that is in place before you start sending personal data. This goes for your email. Is it encrypted? This goes for text messaging. Are you using SMS? Are you using like one of the popular things like that's encrypted, like WhatsApp? Like there's a lot of tools out there to be able to properly transmit information. Are you doing, if you're in business, are you allowing or are you using the right tool to collect client data? It's important to just take a step back for a moment and think about exactly how you're transmitting data and how that data could be used maliciously if it gets out. I think that's really what we're talking about when we talk about the lessons from what we're seeing here is just knowledge is power. And just taking a few minutes to watch this video that we're posting, watching Todd's video that I put in the chat notes in the comments, just so you understand the difference between SMS and RCS. Those little steps, those little micro decisions that you can make big impact to make sure that you're not the next victim of some kind of cyber attack.
Another way, something else I'll leave with the audience, since we're kind of talking about phones and telecom, is if you're in a position at your business where you are carrying maybe sensitive data around or making those type of communications and interactions with sensitive data, definitely talk to your IT department or to your ownership about VPNs or security on the phones and devices themselves. Definitely another, layer or step that you can take to try to protect your business as a whole.
Yeah. Although my suspicions, I think you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here. In this particular case, I think this is a question that would come up, actually. People are going to ask, would a VPN protect them from this particular issue? And the answer would be no.
Like as you mentioned, probably not in this particular situation, since they got in through the telecom side and not
Yeah.
directly through somebody's cell phone. But again, we don't know the ins and outs of this this specific situation besides what
Yeah.
the article shares, and it doesn't get too deep into the technicalities of it so that we can dissect it as cybersecurity professionals. But yes, to your point, some of this might not be protected by then, but like we say,
Well,
layers of security somehow
exactly.
might
I
help you.
just finished doing wrapping up a recording of a podcast just before this, and one of the things we were talking about on that was just having layers of security, not putting all your eggs in one basket, taking a step back to make a plan and make sure you have all the things in place to make sure that you have protection in all the areas that you're doing work, business, sending messages. Are you keeping track of your private stuff? So that's important. So cool. Any final words, Todd?
I don't. I just great conversation today, and it's just important to just start with taking some small steps. Find a proper professional consultant to help you. It's just not enough to have Susie's grandson who's good with computers take care of your business anymore. It's just not, it just doesn't work that way. Just like you're not, you call in a plumber when you have a plumbing issue, you calling the heating and air conditioning person. Technology professionals need to be leveraged these days, rather than just sort of winging it. It's just not good enough anymore to wing it for your business at all.
I'll second what Todd just said. Not only just getting IT support, but having the conversation about cybersecurity. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to a company that was looking for an IT consulting company, and we came in and we started leading with security first, and they always asked, "Why do we need this?" Or and then sometimes we get dismissed because we're offering way more than the other person is, and it's just because we know what's out there, and we want to make sure that our clients are fully protected. That's our number one
Yeah.
priority. That's what helps us sleep at night. That's what should help you sleep at night while you're trying to grow your business.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, guys. Well, I'm grateful you guys came. There's a good chance that we're going to be the three amigos who are going to be back again to do some more cybersecurity education, because this was a lot of fun and I think it's super informational. And for those of you who only caught part of this, we'll be putting a replay out later, but you can also click on this, and this will stay up on all of our Facebook and LinkedIn pages and whatnot. Just super, super valuable to really just be thinking about cybersecurity and how these big data breaches, these big issues that are happening, they affect us. Maybe not in the moment, because, you know, in this case, there's espionage happening, but simple steps really do protect us in the long run. So,
Yep.
awesome, guys. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate you guys being here, and until next time.